Welcome to Backpass with Ras, and I hope you're well wherever you are listening in to us. Today's show is going to be about Chelsea Football Club and specifically the Foreign Revolution that started in the mid-90s with Ken Bates as the club owner and chairman. To discuss this on today's show, I have two guests from Singapore. We've got Kalvinder Singh and someone who is based in Singapore but originally from Switzerland, Raphael Reich. Did I get that right, Raphael?
Yes, you did. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Raz.
How are you guys, Kelvin?
Good, man. Good. Enjoying the Chelsea 2-1 win over Bournemouth in the friendly. Happy. Good times. Good times.
Yeah, looking forward to the season, I guess.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Champions League crown again.
Yeah, crowd again. That's important. We've been missing that. Okay, guys. So are you guys ready to get the show on the road?
Of course. Absolutely.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
All right, so we start now with segment one. We go and look at the beginning. And people recognize Chelsea as a successful club, always fighting for major honors. But that wasn't the case in the early to mid-90s. For me personally, it was a shock in the 1993-94 season when they beat my favorite English club, Manchester United, home and away. And at that time, had a fantastic team. They had a fantastic season as well. They were beating everyone. So that's why it was shocking. I think Chelsea ended that season probably mid-table. So didn't expect that at all. But that's where, Chelsea caught my attention. And the two teams, met in the FA Cup final that season, which United won 4-0. So Kel, you became a Chelsea fan a season after that, 1994-95. How did that happen?
United was the in club in the 90s, right? The early 90s, in primary school, everybody loved United. But I didn't fancy them. So what happened is, I think there's a game on the telly, and then it was just the blue kit, and I saw the logo of a lion. That stood out to me. I was like, okay, interesting. And then I saw Gavin Peacock and Dennis Wise just smash the players in. I'm like, that's it. That's my team. And I just fell in love with it. And the thing about it was very raw, because at that age, you look at Old Trafford, it was a beautiful stadium. Anfield was beautiful. And if you remember Stamford Bridge, it's
under construction.
Correct. There's always a massive crane at the back, still under construction. So it was so raw. It was so. I felt like it's something that can go somewhere. But at the age, I just fell in love with that club, and I said, no, that's my club. I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to be loyal to it till the end. So I fell in love with it.
Yeah, Gavin Peacock, he's the one that scored the goals against United in that league win the season before. Yeah. And you mentioned it quite well. At that time, probably you will be surrounded by fans of Manchester United, Liverpool, even Blackburn Rovers. They won the league that season, 94-95. What was it like as a Chelsea fan in that season, in your and among your friends,
very tough,
family?
Very tough. You're a young kid, 10 years of age, 11 years of age, very tough, where everyone is talking about, oh, we're going to go to the FA Cup final, or we're going to go to this final or that final, we're going to win the league. And you're just looking at the league table, and your team's going to finish 11th at best. But you go, you know what, forget it. I think the jersey is cool, except for the grey with the orange, which was very I saw. But I think it was hard because everybody had like good players from United, right? And you get the Lee Sharp, the Kinchelskis, and then you had Alan Shearer, Tim Sherwood from the Blackburn side as well. And then you could only leverage on your Gavin Peacock, your Dennis Wise, everybody else, Jody Morris, all these guys. They came later on, so there wasn't really much to stand out. But I took a lot of teasers, a lot of jabs, especially the name being a girl's name. They would say Chelsea Club. It's a girl's name, so you're supporting a girl's club. And I'm like, no, it's a lion. It's you try to fight back. But I think it kind of strengthened my bond and my belief to keep with the club through good or bad. So that was that kind of decision I made at that very young age.
Okay, Raphael, by the time you became a fan, it was getting a bit glamorous to start supporting Chelsea. It was in 1998-99. What made you a fan?
It's a combination of factors, actually. I mean, as Cal said, the color blue was obviously very nice. So that was something. But it was actually my local club at that point, because I was living in London, in Kensington, to be exact, and very near Earl's Court. So it was geographically probably the closest club to where I live. And my dad's friend was a season ticket holder and big Chelsea fan. So he took us along to a game. And I guess the rest is history for me. I just, became became in love with the club. Another thing is you mentioned the glamorous part. So back then, Chelsea started having these really exciting foreign fair players coming into the club. I mean, Gianfranco Zola obviously being the number one in that regard, but there was an exciting mix of the British grit with Dennis Wise, of course, the captain, but then that mixed up with like really exciting players who from overseas, including Zola, Vialli, and the like. So yeah.
Okay, how old were you at that time?
98, I would have been 13.
All right, so you were a teenager at that time.
That's right.
This is just the beginning of your time as Chelsea fan, the both of you. With that, we conclude segment 1. That's very short and sharp because we have got a lot more to talk about in segment 2, 3, and 4. This time we've got a 4th segment as well. So over now to segment 2. Right now, segment 2, we're going to start talking about the start of the foreign revolution. So, Kel, you are a fan already earlier than Raf. So, this segment, it will be dedicated to you. Raf, if you have anything you want to add on in this time, do feel free to speak out, okay? Kel, my first question to you. Briefly, what do you remember of your first season as a Chelsea fan?
I mean, finishing 11, painfully. You know, in the league I used to call us the Robin Hood of the Premier League, where we used to take points off the big boys and then lose to the smaller teams the next week. You know, that's what the old Chelsea was. But I remember we went to the UEFA Cup, Winners' Cup, I think in the semi-finals.
Yes.
We came down from, I think, 3-0 down in the first leg. Yeah. We lost 3-1. I mean, we won 3-1, but we got knocked out 4-3 on aggregate. That was pretty much it. And I think that Chelsea still didn't have an identity then. Like, you know, over the years, United had the identity of being the all-out attacking team for the first 15, the last 15. Chelsea was still finding its identity, its groove, and it's, you know, slowly getting into Europe, even though it was glamorous, but still getting into there slowly was maybe the start of what I thought was going to be progressively. And yeah.
I must point out that you lost the semi-final to the eventual winners, Real Zaragoza.
Yep. We lost, I think, 4-3 on aggregate.
Yeah. You lost Chelsea.
Really painful.
And there were other players as well, I want to point out, in that team. Yep. Spencer, South African player Mark Steen.
Yes.
Dimitri Karin.
Yep, Dimitri Karin.
Steve Clark.
The legend Steve Clark.
Yeah, those were the names.
Dimitri Karin was more famous for fumbles than saves sometimes. You know, with the old school.
And his hair.
Long pants, yeah. The perm with the long goalkeeper pants. Always, you never knew what you're going to get.
Yes. So moving on from that, you finally win a trophy after 26 years with Ruud Gullit at the helm as player manager in the 1997 FA Cup.
Mm-hmm.
What did it feel like for you?
I mean, great, right? We lost to United in the 96 semis, and then the squad that we had. I mean, for me, was because my dad was a massive Dutch fan. So he would, to give you how crazy a fan my dad was, he used to sign my report cards. You know, back then in school, report books, cards. He used to sign his name as Gullit. So can you imagine me having to go to school that explained to my teachers this, who is Gullit? I'm like, my dad's signature is Gullit. So that's how mad he was. And when Gullit came to Chelsea and became the manager, he kind of pretty much just told me stories about Gullit, how amazing it was with Van Basten, the Dutch connection. It made me read up about it. And I think winning that trophy was great, but also the fact that we had Gullit, Hughes, Zola, Di Matteo, you know, the flair was starting to come into Chelsea. The bit of London sexy football was coming into Chelsea, where it was no longer pump the ball up. It was more pass. It was more flicks. It was a bit interesting, and a bit of the revolution started in terms of the flair players that we had. And, you know, that squad was amazing. Zola is everyone's favorite player, I guess, for Chelsea. But, you know, Di Matteo as well, really one of the most underrated players in the Chelsea squad, definitely.
It was a surprise to me because I think you guys would know I'm a Serie A fan. So I've been watching Serie A since before that, since the early 90s. So when Di Matteo joined Chelsea, he was relatively young. And Gullit was nearing the end of his career. Vialli, the same as well. So when they joined Chelsea, you probably looked at it as, okay, maybe they're just going there as one last hurrah in the year before they ended it. Zola, 50-50, a bit surprised as well that he went to Chelsea in England. Because at that time, Serie A was the biggest league. But Di Matteo came there at a relatively young age, 26 years old when he joined Chelsea, and he had his best years there.
Yeah,
that was a bit of a surprise to me.
But getting like Mark Hughes from United, United player coming to Chelsea, that was also a bit of a small statement, a small win as well. I think it kind of create the nucleus for what Chelsea was going to be in the future.
Yeah, exactly. That was a fantastic signing. Mark Hughes was a brilliant player for United. And, at that time, it came as a shock for all the United fans when Chelsea and United sold him on.
Yeah.
So moving on from Gullit, we've got another player manager now, Gianluca Vialli. When he was at the helm, Chelsea won 2 trophies a season after that FA Cup we spoke about.
Mm-hmm.
You feel at this point that they were now getting closer to winning the league?
I think we finished 4th in that season. We got the League Cup, and he also won the UEFA Cup Winners' Cup with Chelsea, right? So, I mean, in terms of getting closer to the league title, still not there. We had a good squad. We had, Jody Morris, you had, of course, Steve Clark. We had Matteo Graham Lasso, my favorite Chelsea player of the generation. He was in as well from the Blackburn championship winning side. He came back to Chelsea. It was that so, but the fact that we couldn't beat the Arsenals or the Uniteds, that's the thing. We will end up, as soon as we thought we were going to beat United or Arsenal, they will end up beating us. So finish 4th was as good as it's going to get. But one of the best highlights of that season for me was hammering Spurs 6-1 at White Hart Lane.
Ooh.
It's beautiful when you hammer
Spurs fans got to just block this off now.
Yeah, but I think and the thing about Vialli is I think he was one of the first foreign managers then in the league. I mean, besides Wenger. But what he did, what he had at Chelsea was really, really underrated, and that kind of sparked that whole Chelsea-Italian connection that we've seen carry on throughout the years as well. So I think most Chelsea fans will tell you Vialli is really, really underrated, not only as a player but as a manager in the Chelsea team as well. So yeah.
Yeah, you must have loved meeting Middlesbrough in the finals as well, right?
Oh, as long as Middlesbrough there, give Robert Di Matteo a ball, he'll hammer in the first 40-something seconds into the thing. It was I'll never forget. Just hit the crossbar and boom, it went in, and I was like, "That's it, 1-0." That iconic strike that you can remember as a Chelsea fan of how he just whole body lifts off the ground, just smacks it beautifully, connection, and you cannot get a perfect strike. And yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, League Cup final, you beat Middlesbrough again, and Di Matteo scored again.
Yeah, that's his favorite team, I guess.
Yeah, I'm sure it must be for all Chelsea fans at that time.
Yeah,
you spoke well about Vialli, and that really leads up very nicely to segment 3 now. And in segment 3, we're going to look at the Italian influence on Chelsea.
Wise for Chelsea. Rolled up to Di Matteo. He has Hughes making an angled run ahead of him and opened up some space though, and a goal! Oh, fantastic start! Roberto Di Matteo! Inside 45 seconds.
Well, that was an incredible goal. Middlesbrough backed off, and Di Matteo just kept running with the ball, and eventually thought the only option was to have the shot. And what a strike it was.
So now segment 3, it's over to you, Rafa. This is all about Kel again. If you got anything you want to share, please feel free to talk. No problem. We'd like to hear from you as well, your memories. So segment 3, we're going to speak about the Italian influence on Chelsea. Chelsea had this significant Italian influence. We had players like Zola, Di Matteo, Vialli, Casiraghi as well. Sam Della Bona, who remembers him, Carlo Cudicini, some of the players. And there are players there that were, successful in Serie A, like Marcel Desailly, Mario Stanic. And in this segment, we're going to focus on the managers. Okay, so Rafa, Gianluca Vialli won 5 trophies in 2 years as manager, which was an impressive record. Were you surprised at his sacking in the year 2000?
Very much so. I mean, I think it came as a bit of a shock to all the Chelsea fans back then, Ras, because he's a Chelsea legend. He was great as a player. It was exciting that he joined as a player manager first, right? Which I mean, Chelsea has a little bit of a history just before that as well. But normally, I mean, in today's age, that's unheard of, right? You don't really do that anymore. And I remember actually in his last season as a player, before he fully focused on becoming a manager, he actually scored a goal. And then I think he brought his tally to 40 goals in 80 plus appearances. So a very respectable tally he got as a player for Chelsea. So well admired. And then as a manager, of course, loved as well, very classy. But then he got sacked at the start of the season in 2000, and shocked, yes, very sad as well, because he's part of the Chelsea family. But there have been rumors and some whispers in the press a little bit before. I remember, especially about key players falling out with the manager at that time. So that's never really a good sign. And especially not that one of the players mentioned, I remember, was actually Gianfranco Zola. And I mean, if you know Zola a little bit or you see him, he's probably one of the most humble and good guys in the world. So if he falls out with his Italian buddy and there's there's some disparity there and some clash, then it must show that something probably wasn't quite right anymore. But yeah, definitely shock and sad as well. That was the reaction, my reaction, and probably of most Chelsea fans, I would think.
Okay, just to recap, Vialli won the UEFA Super Cup in 1998-99, beating Real Madrid of all teams. Cup Winners' Cup semi-finalists, losing 2-1 to Real Mallorca, and they finished third in the league to qualify for the Champions League. So he brought them to the Champions League, first time ever, I guess. Yeah, it was the first time ever. Then he won the FA Cup the following season, beating Villa 1-0. And the season that he got sacked, he won the Charity Shield, beating Manchester United 2-0.
That's right.
Just to recap what Vialli achieved in his time as player manager and manager at Chelsea. After Vialli, he was replaced by another Italian, Claudio Ranieri. But unlike Vialli, Gullit and Glenn Hoddle, he was a proper manager, not a player manager when he took over. And in 2.5 seasons of the Ken Bates era, he didn't win anything. What do you think of his time at that period of time? So we're not going to overlap into the Roman Abramovich era, just
Sure.
Ken Bates era. What do you think of him at that time?
Well, I've always liked Ranieri personally, but I think from a general Chelsea perspective, again, what happened with Vialli, I think at first he faced a little bit of skepticism from the fan base, potentially. But if we look back at what he's achieved, I mean, I think everybody knows that it was that time when he first started being known as the Tinker Man in British media, right? Because you said he's a proper manager. I mean, I would argue that so were the others. But yes, I know what you were trying to say. So he was a manager, not a play manager, and he had a lot of experience. Tactically, I think very sound. He made a lot of changes. He liked to chop and change and tinker, if you want. But that was mostly for the benefit of the team. Yes, maybe he did get something wrong, but which manager doesn't, right? In terms of, I think if you look back at his 4 years at Chelsea, you have to look at the league performance. So in terms of points and performances in league, he managed to gradually improve us year from year to year. So I think Ranieri has always been about improving a team, about creating stability. And he's not only helped the team improve and get a sort of identity, as we mentioned earlier in the show, maybe that was lacking a little bit. I think he's managed to put an identity in place. And also he's managed to develop individual players as well at the club. So I'm personally very thankful to Ranieri, and I thought he's very underrated in terms of what he's done. Yes, he hasn't won a trophy, but coming back to what we said in an earlier segment in the show, where you asked Cal whether, it was time for Chelsea to win the league soon. I think even here under Ranieri, Chelsea fans never expected to win the league. We were always a cup team. And of course, we finished higher and higher, but there were teams that were stronger around us, as we know. So I think what he's done with this, under the circumstances, with his resources, he's improved us year by year, and he's been an excellent manager for us.
Yeah, and he also, just to add it, he also pretty much gave opportunities to the likes of John Terry, Robert Huth, Lampard. He brought Lampard in from West Ham as well, and these days when you have a young talent, most managers would be a bit skeptical to put the young talent, unless it's an attacking front, they wouldn't mind risking it. But from a defender point of view, he gave Terry the chance to partner with Desai and on Leboeuf even to learn from these players. So, a lot of Chelsea fans, you look back at it, also grateful for what he's done in building the future generation of the Chelsea squad.
Thanks a lot for sharing, Kel. I want you to hang on here because the next question I need to ask the both of you. 2002-2003, final day of the season, Chelsea versus Liverpool at Stamford Bridge. Winner takes all for the final Champions League spot. Share with us your thoughts and emotions as that match unfolded. So, Kel first.
That Jesper Gronke goal. In retrospect, I think we didn't need the goal because the 1 point was enough for Chelsea. But I remember standing up and watching that game. I never sat down. I was at home watching it. I stood up with my Chelsea kit on. And when he just curled that beautiful shot in and it went in somehow past the Liverpool defenders and the goalkeeper, I just started screaming and yelling and throwing my kit, even though it wasn't full time yet. But, you kind of go, okay, we're going to the Champions League. And because the talk before that was Chelsea were possibly getting liquidated or even, saying bye-bye to the club to a certain extent, being relegated even, regardless of where we finish because of finances. And that Champions League goal, as I call it, was the one that kind of saved Chelsea and made him a cult hero. Wherever he goes, Jesper Gronke, you ask Chelsea, Jesper Gronke to be like, the man that saved us. We don't care what happened for the other 37 games or his wonderful dribble down the line. Ralph, you'll agree? Gronke could dribble down the line but could never cross.
Absolutely.
Everybody, but he could never cross. And when he scored that beautiful shot, I'm like, thank you. That's it. It was I think besides winning the Champions League, it was the most intense, emotional moment for me as a Chelsea fan, to the point I actually teared. I just on the floor and teared. I'm like, yes, we're fine, we're safe, we're not, no more bye-bye to the club, that kind of thing.
Okay, yourself, Raf?
Well, it sounds like Cal was much more confident earlier than I was. I remember I was a nerve-wracked during this match, and like Cal mentioned, we actually only needed the point as Liverpool were behind us, and they needed to win. So they were going at us, well, I got really nervous and anxious, especially because Liverpool scored first with Sami Hyypiä, right? I think it was like 10, 11 minutes into the game. Yeah. Luckily, we had our rock, Marcel Desailly, show his leadership quality and, the strength to pretty much equalize immediately and get back immediately. And that was, for me, already a sign that things might be okay. But until Gronke scored that brilliant solo effort, it was very tense. And even that was early in the game, right, Cal? That was in the 27th minute or something. Yep. So we still had we had an hour plus to go. So for me, there was always the chance that Liverpool might come back. I think in hindsight, looking back, we were probably in control of the match. We were ahead, but there was always the threat of them coming back. So I was very nervous. I think the only time I was able to relax was at the end, I think 88th, 9th minute, when Gerrard got a red card, which was beautiful. But then after that, I think it was all over, and then we could actually relax. As Cal said, it wasn't just about Champions League, though. I mean, in retrospect, we were in big trouble. We had accumulated a massive debt, so we needed that Champions League qualification. But also, this was the last match before a certain Roman Abramovich took over the club, right? So if Chelsea wouldn't have qualified for the Champions League, Abramovich might have not bought Chelsea at the end, and that deal might have not been through, and we might have been in big trouble. But anyway, luckily it did, and the rest is history, as they say.
Yep. Yeah, I remember that Zola turning Carragher inside out on the flank. I was probably just running down time, but what a player there. Another professional just inside out like that, just to keep time and run down the clock. Fantastic.
I'm sure Carragher still remembers that as well.
Yeah.
Probably still gets nightmares.
I'm sure he does. So we're done with segment 3 and we're talking about Italian influence. Another link, I guess, between the Italians and Chelsea would be the kit color, Azzurri and the blue. Similar.
Russ, before we end, I remembered you mentioned a very random Italian player. I mean, you mentioned some legends, but then you mentioned Samuele Dalla Bona. I've got another one for you, a guy called Gabriele Ambrosetti. He was also on our books for a couple of years. Not a very good, I think he was a winger, but yeah, he was also another Italian. So we had a lot, most of them great, but also some more obscure Italian players.
Yeah, true. I think Della Bona did not too bad. He wasn't very well known, but he
was okay.
Yeah, he was all right. Yeah.
We had the great Christian Panucci on loan, I remember, but then we didn't make the loan signing permanent. But he was on loan, I think, 99, 2000 from Milan, I believe. And and you mentioned Casiraghi. Actually, I was a big fan of his before he joined, but that was a very sad end to his career. You know that he broke his leg, I think, 10 or 12 games into his Chelsea career, and that was game over for him. So that was really, really sad, unfortunately. You were hoping he'd become a great player.
For Casiraghi,
I think he went through like 10 knee operations.
Yeah, it was really
Chelsea
bad.
paid like 4 million to just, give him like a paycheck to retire.
Yeah, unfortunate. Yeah, he crashed into the post at Anfield, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, it was his knee, right? Yeah.
So yes, that was the Italian influence on Chelsea. Very nicely put, nicely shared as well, guys. Raf and Kel. Segment 4, we're going to talk about players and matches, your favorites, whatever your favorites are, just share them with us. So now moving on to segment 4.
Here's Bronchial, got away from Risa! It's a wonderful goal! It really puts Liverpool up against it now!
Okay, guys, are you ready? Segment 4, we want to hear about your favorites. So we'll start with Kel. Favorite player from the era?
It would be Gavin Peacock. I mean, when I first started watching, and then it moved on to Graham Lasso. So because Lasso could fight with nobody in an empty room, basically.
Yeah.
Lasso used to just, and I was always very as a young kid, I was very like, the guy name is Lasso, but he's English. You don't hear many English names Lasso, but then you find out more where he was born in the islands and all. That was one, and then eventually became Lampard. The reason is because everyone knows that Lampard as a player doesn't have skill. He had to train day in, day out to just be as good as he was eventually at Chelsea. So for me, these three players were the ones that I like because they kind of epitomize what Chelsea was, which was heart. Back then, Chelsea, the Ken Bates era, if you ask Chelsea fans to tell you, it's all about heart. We might not win every game, but as long as we just go on the pitch and give everything we can, that would be it. So even to the point when we're playing, 11-a-side when we're younger, I would wear the old Chelsea Fly Emirates blue with the 14 Lasso.
Okay.
And then my team kit on top of it. So, whenever the blue stuck out a bit, I would get stuck in. And the amount of yellow cards and red cards I got playing 11-a-sides wasn't the best for a kid of that age. But, they kind of motivate you to just work hard and put your all on the pitch. So these were my three favorite players.
Okay, just to let you know, you are in good company because Rafa collects yellow and red cards like Christmas cards on the 5-a-side pitch.
all Chelsea fans do, don't worry.
Who's your favorite, Rafa?
My favorite player is Gianfranco Zola. He's the guy who, was the most attractive in the way he was playing, the most flair player when I started supporting Chelsea. So has to be Gianfranco Zola.
Second favorite?
That's a tough one. I had to think about that. I'd say maybe I'll give you a couple of names. Probably Robbie Di Matteo, because he's a fellow Swiss boy. We mentioned Italian. Of course, he's Italian, but he is actually half Swiss, and he's born in Switzerland. So for me, as a fellow Swiss guy, that was cool. And also, he had a penchant for just scoring winning FA Cup final goals, right? Which just made him a really exciting player. Other than that, Captain Dennis Wise, because I think his play style is very similar to how I play football as well, I would say. So, being a proper hard man in midfield, and you needed that. The Premier League in that era, every team seemed to have one like that, right? So we needed someone like that, someone who's not scared to square up, even though he was pint-sized, right? He wasn't a big man, but he had the bravery of a lion, really. So he would defend his team, stand up for everybody, and had a dirty side to his game. Last one I'll mention is Marcel Desailly, because when he came to Chelsea, he was world class. And John Terry would have never been the player that he is now without the influence of Marcel Desailly. And John Terry is probably my all-time favorite Chelsea player, so has to be down to Desailly.
All right, cool guys. Okay, Rafa, the Chelsea player you love to hate.
There's a okay, that's a good one. I think the Chelsea player with probably the worst rep, especially from that era, but probably of all time, is a certain Dutch defender called Winston Bogart.
Oh,
so he
Spot
had
on, Ralph. Spot on.
He had a reputation, you remember, Cal, of actually. Well, he was in great teams, right? He was at Ajax, he was at Barcelona, and he was always part of that Dutch clan of those, players there. So probably
part of the Dutch squads as well.
Exactly, yeah. But there must have been a reason why he was there. But then at Chelsea, he showed absolutely nothing of that, and it just went pretty much bad from day one. He didn't impress in training. Then he got, relegated to the reserves, and then he just didn't want to leave the club and just sit on his fat paycheck, which was way too high at that time for a player of his caliber, and just stay at Chelsea for years, pick up his money, and never really playing a game anymore. So definitely Winston Bogart.
Yeah, and same. And he played 9 games over 4 seasons. Okay. He was always citing injuries, citing not feeling well, and he even said, "I'm going to just collect." He said in interviews, you can find it online, "I wouldn't mind just collecting a paycheck. I'm getting paid anyway, right? It's my job, so I just sit on the bench and collect." And he was the 100%, 150,000% against what Chelsea was. And he was also sucking money dry in a time when money was a bit tight for Chelsea as well. So all the fans hated him. But somehow he got 4 seasons out of a contract and money.
Okay, Kel, on that note, an opposition player that you love to hate.
I would say any Spurs player, but in particular, I would go with the Arsenal Tony Adams, because he always kind of performed against Chelsea, and then when Wenger came in that 90s, 96, 97 era, he just became better than he ever was. And and he kind of made Arsenal very hard to beat defensively, like Burn and Keown and all these guys. And I always felt like the strikers we had back then, Flair and all, but not hard enough to get past these players. And he always had a good game against Chelsea. Tony Adams and his backline always shut Chelsea out. Even if Chelsea scored 1 or 2, he would find a rally that you always see him rallying his team to go and attack Chelsea. And when he did win, he would celebrate over the top. Like, that just annoyed me even more. He was the one player I couldn't stand growing up from an Arsenal from Arsenal.
Okay, Rafa.
I'd say, as a Chelsea fan, but also like as a Premier League watcher, probably Patrick Vieira and Roy Keane, those two guys, because they always cause trouble. Like I said, fortunately we had Dennis Wise, someone who could give back a bit to them. But yeah, both of them, I'm sure if they're on your side, you're gonna absolutely love them. But if you play against them, they're a complete nightmare. So yeah, I'd say those two players.
Okay, cool. Favorite match in that era, Rafa?
I'm probably going to mention 2 here, and they were both in October of 1999, and I attended them both. I was at Stamford Bridge for both. One's a win, and you're going to know which one, Ras, I'm sure.
I know.
And the other one's actually a defeat. But let me get into more detail. So first one is when we beat the big, glorious Man United 5-0. At Stamford Bridge on 3rd of October 1999. That was beautiful. You might remember, Ras, Gustavo Poyet scored within 30 seconds. So it started going really well for us, and pear-shaped for United. Chris Sutton scored in that match, and that was his only ever goal he scored for us. Then I remember Poyet getting a second. And then Jody Morris scored the 5th. He was barely on the pitch for like a couple of minutes, so that was absolutely beautiful. Right through the goalkeeper's legs as well. So it was a great day all out to be in the stadium to celebrate. That was beautiful. The second match I'm going to mention is actually a defeat, but I remember it, maybe not my favorite, but most memorable together with the United match is 23rd October 1999. We played Arsenal. We were 2-0 up against Arsenal. Torre Andre Flo and Dan Petrescu scored headers. I remember that. We were playing great. And then in the 75th minute, we were 2-0 up until the 75th minute. Then a young Nigerian striker, lanky guy, came in with the name of Nanko Kanu. And it was crazy because, I was in the stadium and it was like, we were celebrating, cocky, giving Arsenal all that. Like before we had it in the back. This guy came on and he completely killed us. He scored a hat-trick in 15 minutes. Great goals, but the last one was exceptional. You might remember this, Cal. I mean, as an opposition fan, I had to actually congratulate, and I think I almost applauded because Kanu was near the corner flag. Then he came to the 16-yard box. He dribbled past Ed De Hoy and then scored from a incredible angle. Excuse my language. So that was insane. I mean, as a Chelsea fan, you're heartbroken. You're 2-0 up, you lose 3-2. But in terms of memorable, I'll never forget that match and that individual performance from Kanu against us. Yeah.
Okay, Kel, yours.
For me, it's going to be that same with the United because, we can never beat United. But to get 5 against United, you put a Henningberg own goal in as well. That was like, all right, we finally beat United. And for me, something to, go to my United family, friends and all, to just kind of remind them about the score. That was one. But for me, the other one that I think was memorable was against Norwich in 2002 when Chelsea, I think it was an FA Cup game, where Zola did that beautiful flick past the goal. I think Rob Green was the goalie. I think it was a Lasso cross. Wasn't the best cross by Lasso. But Zola did, because you see the cross itself wasn't good. But for Zola to, have that football brain, that football mindset to just flick it in and flick it strong enough past the goalie in the corner, that was a beautiful goal. And that to me was just a game that, being 2-0 up, but just to see that goal and to have that goal etched in your memory for as long as I live, that's two of my favorite games from Chelsea in that era.
Okay, cool. Favorite manager, Kel?
Favorite manager in that era, I would say Vialli. Like I said, because you see the perception of Chelsea was we didn't have many star players. We were just another Premier League club languishing 10, 11, 12 at times even. He kind of really brought the flair players. He brought, like you're right, from Serie A, a much better league, way miles ahead. He kind of did the initial steps of bringing his players into Chelsea, gave them a bit of style, a bit of flair, winning FA Cup, League Cups, Charity Shield, Cup Winners' Cup, Super Cup even, the UEFA Super Cup, if anyone remembers that. To me, he was my favorite manager because he could play, he could manage, but just that overall flair, style, and identity that Chelsea were sorely missing initially. He's the one we speak about the Mourinhos and whoever we want to, but if you look back at Chelsea, Vialli was really the starting point for the antithesis of what Chelsea is now.
All right. Raf?
I definitely agree with Cal. It must be Vialli, 5 trophies in less than 3 years. And especially if you look at before that, I mean, it was decades of no trophies, of no success really. And then he comes in and does that. Yes, Gullit won the FA Cup, but still Vialli really outperformed and then what was expected of him. So yeah, hands down Vialli.
Okay, Raf, your favorite moment in that era?
It's a tough one as well. Cal mentioned the FA Cup final in '97. Robbie Di Matteo's scorcher from distance, right? Within 40 seconds. That's probably my first memory I have of watching a Chelsea match on TV, and the first goal of Chelsea I remember really was that. So that must be there. FA Cup final 1999-2000. Again, Robbie Di Matteo scoring. Dennis Wise had a great game, I remember, in that final. I think he was the man of the match. And then last one is probably the Cup Winners' Cup final, the now defunct competition, which we won in '98. We won 1-0 against Stuttgart from Germany, and Zola scored the winning goal in the final. So I remember that one as well. So I would say most memorable in terms of trophies and success, those, yeah.
Okay, Kel, yourself?
For me, it'll be that FA Cup goal, obviously, by Roberto Di Matteo. But I think also the fact that when we signed players like Vialli, Zola, Mark Hughes, as I mentioned earlier as well, coming into Chelsea, it was an eye-opener. And then the following seasons, you get the likes of Lasso, then you move on, you get Lampard, Budvin Zenden, Petit joining from Arsenal. To me, these were moments where you see, from my point of view, when I've seen the team pretty much have regular, quote-unquote, regular players, to have all these big names of that era coming into the team, performing, giving it giving a much solid base, a much more intimidating outlook into the Chelsea lineup. That was, to me, the thing that actually sticks with me the most. But I think the Zola signing was something that was, I never expected a Serie A player. I don't know what influence Vialli had back in the day, but God bless him. He just had this influence to bring the right player that fit the Chelsea. Like Zola was the missing piece we needed back then. That really playmaker, come striker, come winger, whatever he wanted to do, he could do. So to me, those were the key moments. The players we brought in, and as well that beautiful, beautiful strike by Roberto Di Matteo.
Okay, cool. And Kel, what impact did Ken Bates have on the foreign revolution of Chelsea?
Wow. So the thing about Ken Bates is he bought the club for £1, the famous £1 deal. And, we've seen recently in these years where managers, where club owners are pretty much keeping their purse strings tight. They don't want to spend. They don't want to invest. Ken Bates was somewhat the opposite. He never really gave up. He never gave up on the club. He was there for every single game, and what he could financially pump into the club, he would do his best to compete with what we thought were the big boys. But he was just there, who was constantly supporting the club, and he was there for all games, especially when you look at the 70s and 80s when Chelsea were up and down promotions, relegations, moving up 2-3 divisions even at a time. So to me, he really was the one that took a chance on the club, took a gamble on the club, with the debt and everything that we had. And from the middle of the financial crisis that we were in, where he came in and he emphasized on the spirit of never giving up with Chelsea. So if you look at the Chelsea back then, they would still fight. Even if we were, in the classic case was the United FA Cup. I think we were 4-0 down at halftime. Then it became 5-0. But Chelsea never sat back and played the ball out, or players were fighting. You've never seen that. You saw them go at it. Vialli scored 2, and another one scored 3. 5-3 was the final score. But in that game, it pretty much summarized the Ken Bates era. Yes, we are down. Yes, we are beaten. But it doesn't mean it's game over. We'll still fight and we'll have a say to make it respectable. So that's what Ken Bates did. He put respect on the name of Chelsea Football Club.
Raf, yourself?
Well, I would say Ken Bates was quite a colorful character, as we all know. And personally, I've got probably mixed feelings about him. So I won't be as positive as Cal was just now. Of course, I appreciate that he actually, what we haven't mentioned yet is that he's also fought a long and hard battle with property developers to actually make sure that Stamford Bridge remains the home of Chelsea, because there were threats that the club might get evicted from Stamford Bridge and they might redevelop it into something. So he led that, and we're thankful to him for that. Also, by the end of his reign, we were constantly in the top 5-6 of the Premier League. So he's definitely brought us to a very respectable position. But why I said earlier I have mixed feelings is the state that he's left us in. We were, I think, 80 million or more in debt. That was the rumor. And we were extremely lucky that Roman Abramovich came in and saved the club at that point. Because otherwise, if we wouldn't have had a buyer, yes, we qualified for the Champions League, as we discussed earlier, that helped. But we were in a really bad shape towards the end of the Ken Bates era. So that's something we shouldn't forget as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I agree with you, Raf. I see that point where he was so into chasing the big teams, he would just invest. And somehow fate and luck has been a bit on Chelsea's side from the 90s onwards, right? So you're right. I agree with that point.
Okay, that reminds me of Serie A actually, or all the owners that pumped in the money because they were chasing glory. And in the case of Serie A, those owners were actual fans of those clubs, so they were passionate and they put their heart into it, and they didn't care about the finances, and that eventually, of course, led to all these clubs, a lot of these clubs becoming bankrupt and then having to sell to balance the books, and the weakening of Serie A after that. But that reminds me of what it was. So another Italian connection with Chelsea there.
And I think a connection is also that often it's not actually the owner's own money. That's where they run into problems, right? So but yes, definitely a connection.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for sharing your memories with us. I hope you have enjoyed yourself going down memory lane listening to this too. gentlemen here, and as well you too, surely jogged your memory, speaking to us today. Wish you all the best in all your future endeavors. And Kelvin, please tell us about your podcast as well.
Oh, thanks, man. It's a podcast with Premier Football, so the store that sells jerseys in Singapore. It's the Premier Football Podcast SG on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen to your podcast. Pretty much, we just talk about what's happening the week of football, just preview the coming leagues, especially from Serie A to Premier League to La Liga as well. And it's just the four guys just talking about football every week.
So there you have it, guys. If you want to listen to contemporary football, you please listen to the Premier Football Podcast. We'll plug in the link as well when we post this episode out.
Sure.
You've got a direct link as well to that podcast. So guys, thank you very much. Please take care of yourselves, and I hope to see you around somewhere soon.
Yeah, man. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Thanks for having us, Russ.
Thank you, Russ.
My pleasure talking to all of you. Until again, goodbye.
Lasso!